Tonight, and following along, to break this down into more digestible parts, we have scheduled presentations by Public Works, Finance, and Administration. And we'll start with our newest member of the Prospect Heights team, Mark Roscoe.
Thank you. Would you guys mind explaining this? This is worth a shot, you know?
And maybe just for a point of introduction, Mark started last June. And I think in a short time, less than a year, it's really given him a chance to analyze the operations of the department. And as I think some of the things you've already noticed, there's the changes that he's made in a very positive manner. And I think this budget presentation will reflect that. I think that he's taken the last several months to kind of diagnose where there are needs and priorities, and that's going to be the subject of tonight's presentation.
Thank you, Joe. Trying to grasp the way the budget's been done in the last few years, coming in now since July and working through the changes that Michael's put together and things, it's kind of interesting because I'm trying to pick up on the way things were done and trying to go forward. And I think it's actually a good time for me because I'm not bogged down with all those different fees and structures. I'm looking at the real data and what we need to do. A year from now, I'll be even more sharp on this because we'll have a whole season of all seasons underneath us. So as we came through this total budget line items last year, $1,192,956. This year, as you can see, it's really flat. Not much of a change at all. Even though there's been a lot of dynamic changes in the budget with headcount, with service fees, with the SSA changes, the levies. So I'm really thrilled that it all came together. And it looks like it's going to be really a smooth process. Some of the initiatives I have on this, highlighted items. One of the big things I think for Public Works and for the city coming forward the next year is a software tracking program for time and expense of our employees. We're still almost doing a paper timesheet and adding things up manually. If someone were to ask me how much time and effort do we really spend on sewer work or tree work, I can come up with a number, but it's going to take me a long time to come up with that. And it might not be decimal point accurate. We're one of the very few communities that haven't migrated into something electronic. So I'm really excited about getting into something where we can actually have data to support what's going on. Not just we think this or we think that, or it costs us this much to do tree work, costs this much to landscape. We'd be better off contracting out lawn maintenance in all of our parks. It's hard to tell from the data that we currently have. So that's something I'm looking forward to for this next year coming forward. Over time, I've looked over the past couple of years at different rates and what's been spent, and I think with what we have going on and a little change in headcount, I think that we're going to be shooting for a lot less overtime this year. The management of the time, instead of sporadic, just this sounds like a good time to do something on a Saturday or Sunday. I think that we're going to see a definite reduction in our overtime expense. Fuel usage, it was forecasted high. We're changing some of the way we do things. Not every guy has to drive a truck every day. If we have a job project going on, 2 guys in a truck to go do something. Things like that will help our fuel cost. We're kind of getting away this year from doing drainage, small drainage issues. There'll still be a few things, but the forecasted budget for that was a little high, I thought. One thing that's an increase in here is tree trimming and removal. We have a forecast in our budget to do tree work. In my view and what I've seen in talking to the guys and talking to residents, we haven't really had a good tree program in a long time. Our program is just let them grow. But not taking down trees in a timely fashion, not trimming the ones that need to be trimmed in a timely fashion. We have the ability to do a lot of tree work. Actually, I'll get to that in my next slide. Fuel pump monitoring. We have fuel in our Public Works vehicle for all of our squad cars in our Public Works vehicle, and the fire department purchases fuel through us. We have a key token and then a PIN number for each person. The system's about 14 years old. It's failed multiple times. It's been band-aided back in place. Luckily, the different prompts you need to do, most everyone knows what they are. Your PIN number, the mileage, and what pump you're gonna use. Half the time the display is hieroglyphics. So you're going by memory. I think this is what I do first, this is what I do second. So that's a big thing for us. And the tanks that are in the ground have fuel monitors in them in case there's a spill or a rupture. EPA requirement, they're tested all the time. Again, that system's about 14 years old. The floats that are in there are no longer manufactured. So we'd have to retrofit it anyways. So changing our fuel dispensing, our port of sale, and our level system at the same time is just a common sense approach. And street signage, another big thing. There's a certain standard that all of our street signs need to be. Our speed limit signs, our only signs, things like that, they need to be reflective. There's a whole standard to it. And we really should have been a little bit farther ahead on this process, like 4 years ago. So it's gonna take us 4 to 6 years to get to where we need to be, but we're gonna just take little pieces at a time. We've divided the city up into about 8 sections. So we're gonna manage our sections one at a time. Instead of doing all the speed limit signs in town, we're gonna take care of neighborhoods. That way we're clear and concise. When we have a project to do, we know we're done with this spot and we move on. And there'll be an inventory of that.
Can I mention something about that? I was actually out in Country Gardens yesterday,
Hmm?
and there's a lot of signs you can't even read.
Correct. That's zone 2, sections A, B, C, and D. It is. Middle, north, south, east, west, 4 quarters. So, absolutely. And the lindens, and they're just, some of the signs are just in poor shape. That gets us to our next slide. Headcount staffing level. Current workforce we have. In the past, workforce in Public Works was a department director and 6 to 8 full-time staff. Now, I know depending on who you ask, they have different memories of how many people have been here or not. When it was mixed in with engineering plus Public Works. Currently, our workforce consists of 1 superintendent and 5 full-time employees. My proposed workforce, the maintenance worker position that was held by Jim O'Neill was not backfilled when he moved up to superintendent. And now with our acquisition of Old Town Sanitary, our increased focus on stormwater management, additional mechanical maintenance and landscape requirements for our completed Levy 37 project. It's a long thing to say, but there's a lot going on over there. And our overall increased level of service for our internal and our external, our customers, our residents, our commercial property owners, we need to be back up to a better manpower level. My recommendation is to hire 1 full-time employee to restore the staffing levels to what they were 2 years ago. So we have myself and 6 full-time workers. The increases in wages would go towards our sewer fund account, and somewhere in 48 to 56 per year, depending on qualifications and how we go through the union ranking. Our breakdown, fiscal year for this would be 4.5 people out of our general fund, 1 full-time water, 1 out of the sewer, and the other half comes out of our parking fund. And we still are planning on 2 part-time guys to do landscaping, cut grass and trim bushes and clean up.
Now, you had made mention of not backfilling Jim O'Neill's position when he moved up,
Correct.
up to...
To superintendent. We had Steve Kataya as the director,
Okay.
and then we had 6 full-time public works guys. Steve Kataya left the city. Jim O'Neill moved up into his spot, but we never brought another person in behind him.
Are you going to put somebody in that position of foreman now?
That would be me. Oh, you crew
You're
leader?
the superintendent.
We have a crew leader, but he's still one of the crew members.
Okay, didn't Jim hold the position of foreman at one point?
I believe.
He
can't
did.
see- was it foreman or crew leader?
After when Steve left,
Is it one and the same,
Yeah.
foreman and crew
I
leader?
believe so. I don't think it was phrased any differently.
yeah, after Steve left, he became the superintendent.
Correct, but is there a difference between foreman and crew leader in the hierarchy of?
In my world, no.
Okay.
We're
We
gonna
don't,
have,
having just been through that labor agreement, we don't have a requirement that there's so many guys, then there has to be a designated foreman. You could just have a crew leader, and we only have, I think, 2 categories, 3 categories of type of worker?
1, 2, and crew leader.
Okay.
And the crew leader is, of course, 2 also.
So it's not a requirement that there be so many
So
crew
we're not
leaders.
adding another position in there like a foreman. Adam Biondo is our crew leader. So he falls into the category of the 6 full-time, presented for 6 full-time people.
It's 2 business cards.
What's that?
He has 2 business cards.
No, it's just one. No. Costs money to make a second card. All right. Other funds we deal with in Public Works. The Water Fund, Michael's done a good job of working through the different processes for billing and elimination of the service charge. We have building repairs we need to do over at the well house. We have additional training for this year. We have no large projects scheduled for this coming fiscal year. Going forward, we have a few things in the pipeline, but nothing that we're gonna handle now.
Sorry.
That's all right. Pipeline?
Yeah.
No, okay, that's okay,
It's down the pipeline.
thank you.
These meetings have to be fun.
They have to.
It's good to have a second guy here. Hydrant work, I don't consider this a large project, but it's something we're gonna do this year. Is we're gonna have a program, we have to be testing our hydrants, flushing the lines, document the flow. This is something we're also working with the fire department on for their ISO rating. So, that's a little thing that we're doing this year, but not a large project.
So that's not done every year, that's?
No, it's not.
How would?
The flushing, we try to do every year, but the actual flow testing has to be rated and through a matter of certification. So that's, I think it's every 7 years or that. We haven't done it in a while, probably a nice way to say it. Parking fund, we talked about Metro tonight. The service charge elimination out of the budget, going to take care of the funding out of basically head count for half a guy every year. We're reducing the service levels that we're gonna put in over there for Public Works. We've gone to a lower rotation, having a guy just there like 3 times a week in the morning to check garbages, do a security check, paper towels, toilet paper, things like that. We're trying to reduce the amount of time we spend there because we don't need to be there as much as we have in the past. We're gonna decrease our expenses by doing that. We've talked about changing things, getting rid of paper towels and going to hand dryers even, just to eliminate more of the paper clutter, a little cost efficiency, different things of that nature to reduce expenses. And then earlier in the year, Joe and I were talking about a parking lot light plan there. Again, to save money, to reduce our expenditures on power. So now that we know we're gonna go forward with a lease, that'll be something that we'll talk about going forward. That's what we can do to decrease our expenses.
We lease this property from ComEd and we don't get free electricity? Really?
But we do want to take advantage of one of their programs to change to
Can we
LED
work that
lights
in?
where they'll supplement a little bit. So they are inadvertently helping
Wow.
themselves.
Didn't you do something with the lights this year?
Yes, we had a survey. We had, it was
No, I
2
mean,
different.
you actually did something.
Oh, yes. We went in there and when we started, I believe, 30% of the lights were working. Now we're at the 80% mark, just by moving things around. We stopped the use of the north lot, so we didn't need that to be fully lit. There were fixtures in there that had a good ballast but a bad bulb. So instead of spending $6,000 on parts, we took parts from the north and moved it to the general population area. And we increased the lighting and everything. We've got a lot of responses on people who are very pleased that it's more lit now and safer. But having all those lights lit is an expense. The more lights you leave on at home, the higher your bill is. It's the same idea with the Metro line. So if we can do something to get into an LED situation there, a few years payback, and then we'll be a lot better off. So
Or we could write something into the ComEd lease saying, can we please get free power?
that's probably
Is it not?
that's probably a conversation for another workshop meeting in 5 years, because that's where we are, right? 5 years.
It's not a negotiating point?
You can always ask
So-
them.
All right, our sewer fund. We have a 2-year project for televising our system. We've been talking about that. It's finally gonna get rolling this year. Breaking the city into 2 spots is just the best idea, as Joe will talk about in our capital plan. And then in the sewer fund, it also comes up with the additional parts, our aging equipment. We have a lot of work to do. the boys have spent, excuse me, the men have spent the last 2 days strictly just rotting sewer pipes that have been clogged and filled with grease and oil. They came in early this morning, worked through break. There's a lot to do out there in the sewer world. So, and when you get into it, it's a dirty, nasty business, but it's what we need to do. So that's where our sewer fund comes in. And that's where also the manpower comes in. It's labor intensive. Our tourism district. We still have service charges in that area. Continuing improvement in the corridor. We're out there more often now cleaning up, just doing garbage cleanup and debris checks. We're really looking forward to this spring. We have tulips and daffodils that are going to be coming up. And then our summer color. We're improving a couple of the beds and some irrigation. So that area of town, we're really thrilled about what's happening up there.
Are we renewing the landscape concepts? Was that a 2-year contract that we
There's
had?
3, and we're just getting into the 3rd year with it.
Okay.
So we're keeping with the regular parameters of our spring and summer, our different color plans. So next year at this time, we'll be talking about if we're gonna keep them for another maintenance for another 3 years. And at the same time, our irrigation system that's out there, we had installed by a different company, but they are now gonna give me a quote on them taking it over. I believe it'll be a little reduced rate even. So we'll have not only people that put the plants in, but they'll also be responsible to make sure the water works. So we won't have anybody pointing fingers if something's not working. And pooling them together, we get a little package deal on the savings, so I'm looking forward to that. Forestry I touched on just a little bit earlier. It's pretty self-explanatory. We have a lot of tree work to do. Looking for an increase in our budget this year to actually address a lot of the issues that are out there. We had 9 large trees taken down this last fall. It was expensive, but it needed to be done. We have a laundry list of trees that are on our list that need to be addressed. Our current crew, we have a bucket truck that reaches about 23 to 25 feet. When you get into trees that are twice that height, you get into the safety concerns. So there's a lot of stuff that we have to contract out when you get to the large, old growth trees. Most of the stuff, we'll be able to handle ourselves, but there's a lot more time and effort involved. So it's gonna be a little more expensive this year.
Is that tree in the picture alive or dead?
It is, all the branches below it are dead. This is Frankie Court.
Would you consider that a tree that needs to be cut now?
In my mind, yes,
Okay.
but I'm not the arborist, so I'll give you, that's my little disclaimer. Because some people will say the tree is good, some will say it's bad, but it's sad looking.
I was just curious. There's a lot of them like that.
Yes, there are. And that's a city-owned tree. Expenditures, vehicle maintenance, pretty cut and dry. We have our fleet, we have our squad cars, we have our public works vehicles. We're keeping them to our best of our ability up and running. We've been subbing out work on the Fords, a lot of stuff that goes back to the dealership, whether it's warranty or otherwise. If it's otherwise, it's because the efficiency factor. There's just some things that they can do faster and more complete than we can in our shop. If we have a dozen things to do, there's always a handful that we take over there. So in the past, the budget was split up between regular vehicle maintenance and professional services vehicle maintenance. Now it's in one account, so it all comes out of the same place. So we're doing that. We talked about the fuel pump. That's the improvements in the public works side there, $20,000. We'll move on, stone and concrete. We have an infrastructure of pipes underground for stormwater drainage. As we've all seen, there's potholes, there's sinkholes. We get calls for them quite a bit. We act responsibly and as quick as we can to safely secure this location, and then we get back out there and we fix it. There are a lot of things that haven't been touched in years. There's sections that we found that have had sinkholes. Talked to residents that they've been there for years and years. We're gonna start improving our infrastructure and our piping. So it's just, it hasn't had a line item. I don't know where the funds were coming from in the past, but it wasn't a defined source. It may have come out of building maintenance or MFT, but we're trying to make things a lot clearer and understandable where we're taking our funds from. So, you can see in here, the bottom right-hand corner is what it looked like before, and then when everything was excavated, that's what it looks like up on top, and
What was that?
this was off of Quaker. Quaker and Cole, this was up in the corner there, I believe. We get into the public works expenditures, building services. This account covers all regular maintenance, the police department, public works, and city hall here. One of the projects we want to do this year is a police department exterior project. The picture on the top right just shows kind of how sad parts of the police department look. I had another picture of the front facade. The stonework is stained, there's mortar that's missing, there's pieces of stone that have disappeared, come off due to freezing and thawing. So this year, we'd like to clean up our department and make it, be the stand-up building it is, and a good asset to the community in looks, not just in its actions. We did put on heated gutter cables on the police department just a few months ago, and Al could probably talk to it, we had a significant improvement in the lack of ice dams in the back of the building where the squads park and on the front steps. So things like that are gonna help the longevity of our buildings too, because we're not having the freeze and the thaw up in the rafters. Bottom corner here shows the salt dome at the Public Works yard. That whole asphalt patch in front of where we drive in to get salt is deteriorated. When the dome was built, this part of the project was omitted for clarity or for expense, but the front in front of the dome should be a concrete pad. So as you're driving in there with the big loader scooping up salt, you're not picking up chunks of asphalt. That stuff gets put into the salt, gets into the machine, clogs up the auger, doesn't come out, and you have downtime. So you have a guy that's working on things. And it's a permanent solution. We put a concrete pad down there and it'll be good for 20 years. So
This is in your budget, or this is?
this is in the budget for this. This is what I'm
The
forecasting
concrete
for
pad?
this year. Yep. And that is the highlights of Public Works. Questions?
Yeah, I'm gonna go back to the very beginning. We were talking about that software tracking system, time and expense. I know when we built the website, we put in things for people to do ordering online
Yes.
through that. Is that gonna interface with this thing, or?
No, it won't. The Civic Plus system that's in there, a resident, you can call in
Right,
and
right.
put something in. That flows through an email system and gets right to the department that needs to go to. This software system is basically for tracking of the employee and what gets done.
Oh, it's a time.
It's a time reporting tool. So we'll know who did what on what day, and then we'll be able to tally everything up and basically aggregate the numbers to what we want to see.
So based upon what comes in from the website, you guys job it out or do what you have to do?
Correct.
Okay.
If Mark tracks all those, the areas where his employees are working,
No, I
we'll be able
understand
to match that up to the salaries and wages that we're allocating to
Right,
those various
right,
departments to see if we need to adjust it from year
And
to
then
year.
the forecasted budget, so let's say next year at this time, will be much more accurate.
You
We
have
won't have the
extra
highs
data.
and the lows.
Yeah, you have the data.
We have good data.
Yeah.
So rather than a paper system, you can.
Correct.
Much easier.
The paper system is not that accurate.
Does this carry like a GIS component to it?
It
Where
does,
You can track it by address as well?
yes. And there's a lot of different versions of software out there, designed directly for Public Works. Cartograph, PubWorks, DP Pub, there's a lot of different activities, and I'm looking into finding the best one that's gonna suit everything we have, and that will also work with our DeWalt GIS. So this is kind of making sure that everyone's on board with us going through to a system like this. Then I'll start investigating and figure out where we're gonna be at.
Does your budget include the cost of the software?
Yes,
Okay.
as long as it falls in the parameters I'm expecting. If not, then we'll have to have another conversation, but
Yeah, Michael, I just want to make sure that once it gets into you and you're doing that time reporting, you guys are talking about interfacing there with the financial system in some way, or is that gonna have to be entered?
Well, I think that's another conversation for another day, because in many ways, we're not even utilizing the software capability we have today with our present system. So for an outside system like this, I doubt initially that it'll interface directly. We'll use the information he provides us to adjust our numbers.
Is that because of the financial side of the thing?
I believe so.
That it is, there's a non-compatibility issue between the two applications then?
I can't say in all cases, but very few of those time tracking programs interface with the software that finance departments are using.
But that to me seems, well, maybe it's, let me ask the question. Is it because of the finance system we're using?
Well, many times there is a employee tracking module within the software that you purchase, but for whatever reason, many of the public works departments don't feel it goes far enough. So then they looked for private or smaller CAN systems. Much less expense provides them with greater options to track it, and they prefer that to pay the additional maintenance expense to continue to carry this module in public works that really doesn't.
At the end of 2 weeks of time, depending on the system, I'll either be able to print out or just email right over to payroll, this is where we're at for this time period.
And then payroll's got to ensure that again. My
Right now-
point is,
Well, in many cases, though, we're not even entering to the detail he may be tracking.
Right.
He wants to know in the course of a day where every employee spent every hour worked. We really don't care in the finance department.
I
But the rest
understand
of us
that,
do.
but the
Right.
data is,
I mean no
the
offense.
data is there, and within those little creases is more work gets jumbled up. I know that from my own basic experience with systems development. I think what we maybe need to talk about, and I don't, it's not the subject of this thing, is somewhere, what of a bridge program that feeds from the more detailed software, what you guys need, without having to have somebody re-enter it again.
Well,
Because every time you do that re-entry, there's a chance for error.
And I think you're right on. I think as we progress through and find our different alternatives, our different choices for this program,
Right.
I'll have a direct conversation with Mike and with payroll to make sure that if we do this, what kind of interface do we have? And if we do this one, it's more compatible. There might be.
Can I expand on what you're
No,
saying?
let me finish. And have a discussion then with the vendor as to what they will supply to get our business, to get the bridge that he may need.
Yes.
If I could expand on what Larry's saying, this is the second time we're hearing this now, because this was also true of the bill payment system. So, is there a disconnect in, correct me if I'm wrong, because you're giving me a funny face there, Peter.
Well, no, I mean, we never dealt with the time hours of that. The issue with our current issue with Cassell is that we don't use it the way we should be using it. That was the issue we had with the vehicle stickers. But that is something we are correcting, and that's actually budgeted for. We're gonna start billing out of Cassell the way Cassell was meant to be, so that vehicle stickers, business licenses, liquor licenses, all that stuff is now billed through Cassell like we do with our utility billing. And our utility billing is fantastic. That's what we want to get to eventually with our vehicle licenses, our business licenses, our liquor licenses. Anything we bill for is going to go through Cassell now and be billed through Cassell. So there may be a module that Alderman Rosenthal is talking about. It's just something that never popped up in my radar to look at. So that's something we have to look at to see what the
So
compatibility
you're
is.
saying it would be something like what we were talking about with Express Pay, where there should be an add-on, but just wasn't available yet?
Yeah.
That would be a plug-in to.
Well, and we should be doing that with everything, I feel, as my experience tells me, we should be doing that with everything that feeds into finance, whether one way or another. If you need more detail, fine. He may not need it. A program or some kind of, we used to call them bridge programs, I don't know what they call them now.
Makes sense.
where you basically feed that information. Whatever he need, whatever Mike needs for finance, same thing with your thing, whatever they need. So there always is that interface, because every time you re-enter something, even though it's less, your chances for error expand geometrically.
Right, and that's what I find right now, trying to figure out where we've been in the past.
Right, right,
It's, you're right on, that bridge is my pen and a calculator.
right.
So I think as we get through this, basically this is what I'd like to do going forward, and as we're talking about tonight, it sounds like everyone's on board with it, it's just we need to get the right product in front of us. So we don't have anything earmarked as this is the exact program we're gonna use right now.
Right, the right
So we're
product,
on the
or the vendor
investigation.
willing to create what's necessary
Right.
from their code.
So based on what Mike needs for finance, what we need to go directly to payroll, and then the data that we're looking for in Public Works to support our budget and to support understanding what we're doing. And if we can't find that magic mix, we'll be doing pavement for another year. And if
The
that's what it
object is
takes,
to eliminate it.
yes. And not just eliminate, but have the understanding of what we're doing and why.
Exactly.
If you don't know why you're doing it, or how much you're doing it.
If I can make one more comment, please.
Please.
I want to commend Mark and all else that were involved in this part of the budget, because this is by far the most complete and comprehensive presentation that we've been given on a Public Works budget in all my time here. I think that, I mean, you really
I whipped it up last time.
did the most with the least. Well, I mean, you did the most with the least, and I mean, really, you should be commended for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, and like I said, everybody else that was involved, because that was a great presentation.
Thank you. And it was nice to try to figure everything out as the way we've done in the past. And like I said, next year at this time, I feel we're gonna have much more tighter.
I'll tell you, I am incredibly impressed with how much you've done in the amount of time that you've been doing this job.
And if I can add something to your comments, Scott, especially the boiler room.
All right, can we move on?
I have a couple of questions.
Oh, you got it. Go.
Mark?
Yes,
and I do emphasize what Scott was saying also, you really do a great job, and you're really on top of everything that I've ever asked you to do, so it's really amazing to me, and I thank you for that.
You're welcome. Thank you.
But I do have a couple of questions about the software. Is it specific to Public Works, or would it be adaptable to other parts of the city? The tracking program I'm talking about.
Into other parts of the as in engineering?
For example, frontline administration, you know, the people that work upstairs. Would it be possible to track them as in addition to your Public Works employees for you know, just exactly what they're doing from month to month?
I'd have to give you, and I'd imagine so, because I have never looked into that part of it. But the software that's out there, a couple of the top names, I know cities that use that as their base, so it must do it all.
I have a reason for asking that, and that's because of vehicle sticker sales. I mean, we kind of like to know how much effort is really put into that, as far as, you know, time and time.
Except we'll find out that Joe spends like 6 hours out of his day fielding questions from us.
Yeah, sometimes you don't want the data.
Second question is, I noticed you have the water operator listed as a full-time,
Yes.
Does he do anything other than water?
Yes.
So-
All the Public Works employees do more than just a job title.
Yeah.
But we try to figure out how much time they spend, and you try to figure out with the software to be a little easier. The best example is our half of a pay for the parking guy.
Mhm.
He doesn't spend half of his life at Metro. He might spend 6 hours a week.
Right.
And then other weeks, we have 4 guys there for 40 hours, you know, because there's different things going on. Snow plowing is a good example. You plow the place 6 times in a week and you get 40 hours of time or 50 hours.
Right. No, I thought that was the case. I just
So,
wanted to
yep.
make sure that.
And the
we all-
same thing happens with the water operator. We have 1 guy towards it right now, full-time. But when we have a water main break, as you know, we have 3, 4 guys out there, and we're out there for whatever length of time it takes. So that's kind of the way that math works out. And if we get into the software program, we'll have an even better understanding that maybe we should be at 1.5 guys out of the water fund and less out of Metro and more, different things like that.
Also, I was just thinking, do we have another second person trained as a water operator now?
We have a second person lined up to be
Jim
trained.
O'Neill was the second.
Correct.
operator.
So I have another guy who's in the wings,
Okay.
and we're gonna be doing more training this year on that.
All right, anyone else?
Yeah, none from Mark. Thank you, Mark. Very good presentation. One for Joe, the GIS now, is that, whose domain is that within? Is that Mark's now? Is that yours? Is it?
With the proposed changes of taking a lot of the GIS out of the building and development, that got moved into the administration fund for oversight.
Okay, because I think that we see tonight that there's a lot of overlap, where GIS could be from just administration to public works to a bunch of different people, and it's just, as long as everybody's working together and when we go out for bids on things that Mark knows, you know, what he would wanna see in that, and we constantly help that thing evolve into something bigger. The other question is for Mike, now it's for you, Mike. You took the NRC out of Public Works and moved it into boards and councils. I get that, it makes sense, but does it, if there are a lot of things that Public Works does with them that kind of bleed into both?
Well, Mark and I had that conversation, and I think it took Mark, you had a few questions of what was being charged in
Right.
there to begin with.
The splitting up the account, we had some issues with the way the budget came through last year, and it wasn't clear at all times as to the NRC budget and the Public Works budget on different things. So splitting it off that way makes it a cleaner divide with a commission or council versus Public Works. The labor, what we do in Public Works, helping with the NRC, isn't a massive amount of time. If they need assistance on something, and we can work together to help things get through, we're all here for the same purpose, for beautifying the city and taking care of our environment. Again, if we had the data, we could actually show that we've only spent 4% of our time in the last year working with the NRC, because they're really substantial and they're a locked-in group that get things done on their own without a lot of interaction. So I think that's why it makes the accounting part of it really the only issue.
So you're creating like a firewall so things don't bleed. That's what
No, I
you said.
think it just,
Otherwise,
it puts
your
them where they.
supplies, equipment and
Right.
whatnot might.
Yeah, but it puts them into into the range of they're a board or commission.
Right, that's true. I
So-
agree. The other question is, you have some of we talked about having a fund inside of Public Works that would be used to make improvements, but not quite meet a capital improvement threshold. So there's a couple things in here. I was wondering if you have like the radio equipment, just general equipment, what else was there? There was something else I saw. Does it make sense to have those? Are those going to be reoccurring costs? Like radio costs might happen and not happen. Software is going to happen and not happen. So we're going to see these things coming on the radar for our 3-year look forward or look back on our past budgets as we look at the new budget. Does it make sense to have those all separate, or should they be just more grouped together where you have Public Works, office equipment, which would be radio, software, and that account, we then know that we spend about 30 a year in it, and it might be a mix of 3 or 4 different things.
I think sometimes, and it's kind of a new process for me here. Once we have the threshold set, whether it's 20, 25,000, that's easy enough to distinguish. It's hard for me to tell which items are going to be reoccurring and which ones aren't. If we saw they were reoccurring, maybe we'll find it worthwhile to group 2 or 3 of those items together to make it a category in the capital program so we can consistently fund for it.
Okay.
The last thing that I want to do is distort the operating budgets just by these one-time capital items, $10,000, $15,000 items that are going to occur every other year. What we're attempting to do on the operating side is keep those operating expenses as stable as possible, so you can see or know why they're fluctuating from year to year. We'll deal with the big expenses in the capital projects.
A classic example of that, well, becoming classic, our personal computers.
Yeah, perfect example. I'm not sure how many you're gonna buy in the course of the year, how often you replace them. The easiest way with personal computers is to set up a replacement schedule
Right,
for
right.
them and replace X amount every year.
By policy, you define their shelf life. You know, what the shelf life is. We've got machines out there that I understand, we still have them out there, that the software they're running on is not even supported anymore.
Now, though, the costs sometimes for some of the computers that we're using are so much cheaper than they were before.
Oh, yeah.
that It's hard to consider them a capital expense.
They're almost supplies.
Yep. Yep.
All right, are we done? I have one request, Mark.
Yes, sir.
Could you kindly come over to my daughter's house? She has kids there and themselves, and the adults. They don't realize when you turn the light off, you can save money. I've told them
Absolutely.
for a very long time. You mentioned it right here in a big-time meeting.
I have a program in my house, and it's, usually it's just a loud voice.
Unbelievable.
But, I can stand outside the house and scream through the windows, turn the lights off.
I think switches that automatically turn on
Yeah.
after a certain length of time.
Yeah.
Those two that can be programmed, right?
Yeah, my children aren't fond of those. I have them.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
All right, Joe, moving on.
That brings us